And Heather, go ahead and talk to us a little bit about the conventions and the elections and what's going on.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jax, and all of the Texas NORML team for hosting this creative holiday event. We're all facing hardships in different ways, and it's been really wonderful to see people being creative and finding ways to stay connected. And appreciate Texas NORML's leadership with our movement here in Texas for reform. Y'all have really set the bar for professionalism and ensuring that this very important issue is taken seriously at the Capitol. It's far too important for anything less than putting our very best foot forward. And y'all have, again, led by example. And I want to encourage anyone who's watching today who isn't a member to join. TexasNormal.org is where you can do that. Sign up to become a member and officially join the team to help the cause. As Jax mentioned, Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy is a coalition organization, and we work with organizations that aren't necessarily drug policy groups or marijuana policy focused, but look at this issue as the right thing to do when it comes to liberty, limited government, fiscal responsibility. I mean, we spend far too much money and waste valuable resources arresting people for a small amounts of marijuana or marijuana in general. And people are seeing that. We know that the vast majority of Texans are on board with reform, and thankfully more now than ever, people are speaking up. They're not as afraid to tell their story, whether it's an arrest or a loved one who needs access to medical cannabis. So we've been working on coalescing with all of these different people, helping folks to understand the political process. You know, many of us are outraged about a variety of things in our country today, and so few of us learned in school how to actively and effectively participate in the political process. So we obviously work together on the legislative side of things, passing bills. But today I want to talk a little bit about what we can do between now and the time the legislative session starts. We have to take advantage of every day that we have in 2020 to be successful, to set the stage and be successful in 2021 when the legislature convenes. We can do that by participating in the political process. We've got elections coming up, we have conventions happening, and as we move away from in-person events, which are obviously invaluable when you are able to broaden your network and build relationships, we are navigating more toward virtual events. And this may actually end up being a benefit to us. Many of the folks that we work with are maybe a little concerned about going to an in-person event or can't because of, as we have all become very aware of compromised immune systems and other disabilities that make it difficult for people to get out. Now that we're doing more things virtually, more people can participate. One thing that Dwight mentioned, which is just right on, is that lawmakers and candidates, lawmakers that are seeking re-election, let me say it that way, are going to be hosting a lot of virtual events, town hall events, campaign events. I would highly suggest following your elected officials and those seeking to represent you on social media, join their email list so that you can stay updated on what they're doing and participate in that. Look at yourself as becoming a part of their network. And when they post something and you can tie cannabis into that, do so in a thoughtful way. Provide links and links to reports or reputable news sources that have articles coming out about cannabis. You know, we're learning more and more about this plant, how it affects the body, how these policies are affecting communities around the country. We're learning more every day. And the more we can share with lawmakers, the better perspective they're going to have on this issue. And it's very difficult to defend the status quo, to defend marijuana prohibition when you understand how these policies are affecting individual communities, families, and the individuals who are being arrested. You know, Texas arrests over 60,000 people every year for simple marijuana possession. We're seeing some of those numbers drop, thankfully, because local prosecutors are saying that it simply isn't worth their time and energy. So we can utilize that information and fuse that into these conversations as we move forward. So, you know, like I said, we know that this is something the vast majority of Texans agree on, regardless of political affiliation. So if you, whether you lean left, lean right, you're a libertarian, independent entirely, there are good reasons to support this cause and good arguments to bring to these people. whether it's decriminalizing small amounts of marijuana. We want to see the elimination of arrests, jail time, and most importantly, criminal records that are associated with small amounts of marijuana. I can't thank Representative Moody enough for his leadership over the years. Grateful to see that he is now talking about repealing prohibition entirely, something that now a majority of Texans, and we've known a majority of Americans, support. Prohibition has utterly failed, and I'm thankful for folks like him leading on that issue, working with his colleagues on both sides of the aisle to find common ground, because that's how we're going to ultimately get all of this done. So let's talk about timelines and elections. We had the primary elections, which is where the individual parties determine what candidate they're going to put on the ballot in November. Most of the primaries were determined in March when we had the original elections. However, a little over 30 races are going to a runoff. That means that there wasn't one candidate in the primary election that got more than 50%. So the top two candidates are going to face off in the runoff election. The date was originally in May, but has been pushed off due to the coronavirus crisis to July. So the election for the runoff elections is going to be July 14th, with early voting starting on July 6th. There is still time to get registered to vote. So if you are not registered to vote, please do so. And we will be putting out a voter guide on the runoff elections. So we're going to be showing head to head who's in these runoff elections. Two examples to note of why we should be getting involved in these elections. Number one, we have Harold Dutton in Houston, who is a Democrat, longtime supporter of reform, has introduced many bills over the years, and he is in a runoff election. We also have a Republican, J.D. Sheffield, up in Gatesville, which is up towards North Texas. He was a joint author on, no pun intended, on the comprehensive medical cannabis bill and has been a champion of this issue. He's a physician and his opinion really matters. He may get knocked out of this race and we wouldn't have him back in the legislature. Obviously, many voters care more about just one issue, so weigh the various issues that you care about, but make sure that you're actively participating. And I do also want to note that even if you are not in these districts, we have more competitive races than in recent history in Texas. And you can participate by signing up to volunteer, to phone bank. You can help with social media. But helping with these campaigns, making sure we're showing lots of gratitude to our friends, and maybe getting some folks out of office who don't support what we're doing, helping to activate your friends there in the area, making sure that they're registered to vote. So we have the primary election, runoff election coming up in July. And in November is when the Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, and if there are any Green Party candidates, are going to face off. And of course, we're going to be working with Texas NORML to put out a voter guide to ensure that everyone who cares about this issue knows where all the candidates stand on decriminalization, medical cannabis, and on repealing prohibition entirely, so that you can be an educated voter when you cast your ballot in November. As I'm sure that has been noted, the pre-filing period starts just 6 days after the election in November. So it starts very soon after the election. So just 6 days after they're elected, they start introducing bills, and we want to hit the ground running at that point. So in addition to elections, we have time this summer to participate in political conventions. Some of you may have already started participating in your local precinct conventions, county and Senate district conventions. There's been a little bit of scheduling issues because of the health issues that we're dealing with COVID-19. So what I would recommend is, if you are interested in participating in conventions and attending, conventions are, let me just back up a moment. Conventions are where all of the members of each political party convene together. They do it once every 2 years. They determine their party officials, so who's going to be chair, vice chair, all the other officers of the party. They determine their bylaws and they determine their platform. So in addition to being a delegate and voting on the platform to hopefully include cannabis planks, which every political party on the ballot includes now in support of at least decriminalization and medical marijuana. But in addition to being a delegate and participating in that, you can show up as a guest. And there's lots of different events to go to, expo halls, and people to meet and dialogue with. Building those relationships. And of course, with the conventions being bringing together so many people from around the state, especially Republican Party convention, which is traditionally 8,000 to 9,000 people, it's hard to say if by July they're going to be able to proceed with that. But we do know that the Democratic Party is hosting a virtual convention, and they're doing that in June. So let me give you the breakdown of the dates of these different elections, or excuse me, these political conventions. So we've got the Democratic Party, which is happening. It was scheduled to begin on June 4th, with it being a virtual event. I'm not sure if it'll be June 4th through the 6th as originally scheduled, but they'll have more information coming out about that. So if you're interested in participating with the Democrats, that's going to be your time, June 4th through 6th. Visit their website and contact the local county party for whatever political party you want to work with, and ask the county chair, ask the officials at the local level, what's going on locally that you can participate in. We've got the Republican Party of Texas. Their convention has been rescheduled and is going to be happening July 13th through the 18th. So it's important that folks are paying attention to those dates that want to participate. They always have a huge expo hall, and you can guarantee that Governor Abbott will have a booth there. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who we're going to have to work with in the next legislative session, is going to have a booth there. So it gives you opportunity to meet some of these folks. And again, you can attend as a guest. We also have the Libertarian Party of Texas having their convention. They just announced their new dates. It'll be July 31st through August 3rd. And that is when libertarians will be convening, determining their platform. Of course, libertarians have long been in support of marijuana law reform, and we're glad to have to be working with our allies there. I did learn recently that the Green Party of Texas has had conventions in some counties, and they recently hosted their state convention virtually. In fact, they just did it on Saturday. And so there will be some Green Party candidates on the ballot. If that is your party of choice, I recommend reaching out to them on their website, learning how to get more involved. Again, these political conventions are where the most politically active people in our state are convening and doing business, networking with each other and building relationships. This is a great opportunity for you to get involved as well. I want to just close out by reiterating that the work we do now is critical for setting ourselves up for success. And as Dwight said, we have to have positive attitudes. It is so easy to feel drugged down by negativity, and so many people behind keyboards find it easy to be negative rather than being positive. But we are winning. We are winning in the United States. Prohibition is crumbling, and that is happening in Texas. And it's thanks to the many organizations working across the state and the individuals speaking out now like never before. And we are going to have a very big legislative session if we continue to do the work now to again set ourselves up for success. Our website is texasmarijuanapolicy.org. There's a Take Action tab where you can contact your legislator, send emails. There's a script to send a phone call or to make a phone call and to connect on social media. Again, I want to thank Texas NORML for hosting. That was the first marijuana policy group that I joined many years ago, and it has been very well worth the investment in having someone that we know we can count on to make this issue, bring it to the forefront and ensure that it is taken seriously, because it is just too important to let prohibition stand for any longer.
Thank you so much, Heather. I appreciate all of your kind words and joining us today. It's been a pleasure, of course, to work with you over all of the years. So I'm very grateful for that. And I did put in the comments a link to the voter's guide so that people can check back on that when we have that ready. But I was wondering, just real quick before we pivot over to Justin, would you touch on our current Safer Texas action? And I'll go ahead and drop that in the links and get people engaged on that.
Absolutely. Well, as we know, the coronavirus is taking a toll on the country and our state. We know that people in confined spaces are particularly vulnerable, and we don't want to see people being arrested for marijuana possession to begin with, let alone them being arrested and put into a dangerous situation, or to exacerbate the criminal justice system as far as our correctional workers who may be unnecessarily threatened with the virus by bringing more people into the jail system. So what we're doing is calling on the governor to issue an executive order that would immediately stop all arrests for low-level marijuana possession, whether it's the flower or these concentrates, which, as we know, is a felony in Texas. So while I am sitting comfortably in the silver state of Nevada, where they legalized it in the middle of 2016, I believe, unfortunately in Texas, there are still very steep penalties for marijuana possession. even in tiny amounts. So we want the governor to stop all arrests throughout the state. And we're also calling on him to, when it is safe to do so, convene a special session and legalize marijuana in Texas. We know that it is the safer approach when it comes to public health, public safety. It'll help to generate revenue from the state. If we do it reasonably, obviously we want reasonable taxation and regulation, because we know when big government goes rampant in these other states, the black market thrives. But we can be reasonable, generate revenue for our state, keep people from being arrested, and preserve valuable criminal justice resources by legalizing marijuana in Texas, and finally repealing prohibition.